Today we're going to show you how to edit 3D text and objects into your images using Adobe After Effects. And before that scares you away, you don't have to know how to use After Effects in order to follow along, okay? I'll teach you the very basics. We'll keep it as simple as possible. But this is an effect that I use all the time, and people really love it. And so I think you're going to enjoy what we have today. Let's bump, bounce, and boogie. Hey, what's up? It's Austin here with Falter Media Company, and let's dive right in to Adobe After Effects. But before we open up Adobe After Effects, let's start in Premiere Pro, because this is usually to show you my workflow, and probably the easiest way to open up After Effects is by doing this. So when I have a section in Premiere Pro that I want to turn into an After Effects composition, usually I don't just want one little clip or one scene in After Effects, and I don't do my whole edit in After Effects. I mostly edit in Premiere Pro. And so what I'll do is I'll have it in my timeline, and then I'll keep track of the places where I want to add a special effect. And I can do it after the fact. It's called After Effects for a reason. And so what we're going to do is we're going to trim this clip to exactly where we want it to be. No birds were harmed in the making of this film, although I did feel a little bad about doing this. Probably freaked him out. Okay, right here we are going to cut that and that. So I've got this clip that I have ready to go, and if I right click, or I think that's a right click. If we right click here, we can see replace with After Effects composition. And so when you do that, the computer is going to launch After Effects, and it'll create the composition with this one video clip already in the timeline. So that's awesome. It does all the work for us. And here we are. We are now in After Effects. So I'm going to go over the windows really briefly. This isn't going to be an in-depth tutorial, but it'll be enough to follow along. So here you have the preview window. And sometimes you'll be editing something and you don't see the change taking place. That's probably because you have a layer selected and not the whole composition selected. So you want to make sure that you're previewing the right thing. So by default, it's on the composition right now. Over here we have our media panel. It's the project panel. And that has all your folders and all the videos that you drag in or the things that you import. They're all going to end up here. This little icon with the different shapes, that's a composition. As you can see right here, it says composition. It's basically a sequence. It's the same as a sequence in Premiere Pro. And so we have our composition opened up. And if you need to open up a composition, you double tap that and it opens it up right here. So here we have our birds composition. And as you can see, it's already put that media file in this composition. By pressing space, it will start playing your video, but as you can see, it's not playing in real time, probably because I'm screen recording right now. And so what it does is it'll render, and then now this green part on the timeline will now play in real time because it's already pre-rendered. So that's pretty cool, and that's why Adobe After Effects is able to handle a lot more, because you can do this type of rendering before you even play it back. So that's that, and then over here we have our effects, which we're going to go into. But let's get started with this text. Select your video that you want to add text to, and then we're going to go over to the tracker panel. And if you don't see that, go up to Window and make sure Tracker is selected. But mine shows up right down here on the default settings, and we can go Track Camera. And what this is going to do is Adobe After Effects is going to take a look at the whole clip and say, oh, it's moving this way, and we're moving around an object here. And it's going to track all of that and find little tracker points all over and say, the camera is right here in this 3D space, which means if the camera is moving like this, then I'm going to create all these tracking marks up against the image that will follow the image to counteract the movement of the camera. So it's pretty cool. As we're finishing up rendering here, I just wanted to say that it's important that when you're adding floating text to an image, the way to really sell this effect is to have a shot that has a lot of movement, right? So if I just have a tripod shot of me sitting in my office, I could add something here and maybe mask in front of it to make it look 3D like it's floating here, but it's not going to really look that cool. When you have something moving and then the text stays with the scenery, right? That's when this effect looks really cool. So find a clip where you're moving around, and After Effects is going to do all the work to make it look really awesome for you. So we are here 96, 97%. And the next thing that we're going to do, once we have this clip selected, it's going to say solving camera. And we are going to go over and click render tracking points. And what that's going to do is allow us to see all these different tracking points around. So if I go back to the beginning of this clip, you'll see, let's render a few seconds of this. You'll see these tracking points that just follow different objects throughout the whole scene, right? So this first little bit, you can see that happening. And what we're going to do is we are going to select some of these tracking points to put our image. There's a little target. If you have your clip selected and if you have tracking points on, you'll see this target on all these different tracking points. We're going to pick one. Let's say one. I want it to be up here actually. So we're going to click that. And now when you have that selected, you're able to left click or right click, whichever one that is. I don't have a mouse, I'm on the trackpad. And you can press create text and camera. Okay, so that's the one we want to do for this floating text. And what that did is it put it right down here. Now, if you can't see the option or the target showing up, make sure, again, this is selected, 3D camera tracker, the clip is selected. If you don't have your tracker selected, here I'll unselect it there. And as you can see with my mouse, there's no target showing up. The first time I tried to do this, I was following along on YouTube somewhere and I could not find out what was going wrong, and it's because I didn't have this effect selected. Now these targets are here. Okay, I need to put this back to fit. And now, let's move me out of the way here. We have this text floating up there. So what I want to do now, because I've decided where I want to get rid of these tracking marks and just work with the text. So click the tracking marks away, and now we have to re-render it in order for that to show up. So we're going to re-render for a second. And that text is floating up there in the corner of this image. So it's already pretty cool that it's up there, and we didn't really have to do anything for that. So now we have this text layer right here in our panel, and we also have this 3D camera tracker, and that's just kind of invisible. It just sits in the background. It's what holds all that tracking data in that layer. And so if we want to attach other objects, we can do that later. But let's start with this text, and for starters, we can drag it around, which is kind of cool, but I don't really want to freeform drag it too much because then I don't know exactly where it is. Right now we know it's attached to that tracking mark on the wall. So maybe let's just use these axes and go straight down and then straight over. And that will change where this text is. Now, right away, I don't like this color, the kind of off gray. So we're going to go into our text. And as you can see in the layers, there's this little arrow right here. If we click that arrow, it opens up all these different properties. And this is where you're going to be able to really change the things that are going on in your image. So let's start with having text selected, and we'll double click and highlight the text. It'll open up this paragraph menu and also the character menu. And we are going to want to change the color of this. So let's go here and let's make it white. I really like the just nice white. Let's go back to our arrow. And now, as you can see, the text is white. We don't want it to say text though. Okay, so this is the mistake. I double clicked on the image and now it opened up layer, right? So that's what you want to avoid. You want to make sure your composition is selected, and things might disappear on you if you do that. But don't make that mistake like me. So text selected. Let's change this text to 3D. Whoa, I need to stop holding shift. 3D, there we go. And then we're gonna make this bold right here. Ooh, looks great. Okay, now we've got this 3D text floating around, and as you can see down here, we're able to change the orientation of the text just like we were doing with the little side thing here. But this is a more precise way to do it and know exactly what's happening. I can change the scale. You can unlink the scale so that you can change it, make it, stretch it, you know, and pull it different ways. So that's pretty nifty. And then you can also change the rotation individually, X, Y, and Z axis, all right here. So under transform, under these text options, you're going to see all of that. I'm happy with it where it is, but one thing I usually do to sell this effect is add a shadow. And so what we're going to do, I'm not sure how it's going to look with all these birds, but if you have a flat ground, you'll want to do this. So I'm going to copy this layer and paste it. What we're going to do is change the orientation to be on the ground so that it's the shadow of this. So we're going to go to text and transform. This one's our shadow. And we're going to go, let's see, what axis is that? Is that the x-axis? Let's try that. Yeah, x-axis. We want it to be down, flat like that, maybe a little up. And then we're going to change the position. Let's change this to black. We're going to change the opacity down to something maybe around 60%. And then I actually do want to make it a little bigger. Grab my selection tool, which the short hotkey for that is V. And now with this shadow, it's a little too sharp for me. So what I want to do is I want to add some blur to it. And so right now I don't see my effects panel, but it's hidden over here, effects and presets. If you need to find that, you can go up to window and find effects. Gaussian blur, we're going to add it to our second layer, which is the shadow. And then over here you can see Gaussian blur. We're going to add blurriness up until it looks kind of faint. There we go. Okay. Let's render this and see how it looks. Okay, here's how this looks. If we press space, as you can see, we fly right through that object. Now, if I had more time with you, I don't want to take up a ton of your time, but if I had more time, what I would do is say, well, I don't really like when it just goes right through the object. I actually wanted it to fly in between the letters. So what you can do is position them so that it's right in the center, so that we're zooming right through the letters, and that way they appear on either side, rather than just going through this flat object. So that's something you can do. Use your creative decisions on where you're going to position it, how you're going to position it. But that is how you add floating text into your image, into your videos through Adobe After Effects. So if this was helpful, and if you like kind of how unscripted this was, being able to just follow along with me and see some of the mistakes and challenges that go along with using After Effects, if you're not super into it like I'm not, then if you want more like this, then go ahead and let me know in the comments what effects would you like to see more of. I'd be happy to give it a try, and we'll do another tutorial together. Thanks so much for watching. Now go create something beautiful and make your mama proud.